Storytime, my parents found out that I was dating a white boy. So a little background information. My parents are super strict, especially my dad. And on top of that, my dad thought that races should not mix. One of his sayings was, "You don't see a blue jay fucking a pigeon." AKA, white people and black people should not be together. Sounds fucking stupid. Yeah, I know. Anyways, like I was saying, it was my freshman year of high school and I had been dating this boy for 2 months. And of course he was white. And we had to keep it super low-key because if any of my friends found out about it, they would have fucking told my dad. Now when I look back at it, those weren't good friends at all. Anyways, every Friday, my boyfriend and I would go to the movies. And we would go to this theater that was 45 minutes away because nobody that I knew would be there. The only person that knew that I was dating a white boy was my sister. Well, the one day after the movies, I couldn't get a ride home, so I had to get a ride home with him and his family. And as soon as I pulled up, my parents were waiting outside, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my parents found out that I was dating a white boy. So like I said, my sister couldn't come pick me up, so I had to get a ride with him and his family. And what do you know, as soon as we pull up to my fucking house, my dad is standing on the porch waiting for me. So I told his parents to drive around the block one more time while I called my sister and told her to distract my dad. So as we're driving up to my house again, I see that my dad isn't on the porch. So I run into the house before he could see me getting out of a white boy's car. So a few months go by and we're still dating, very low key. And the one night at 3 in the morning, I get woken up by my sister. And she says, "You better delete any pictures that you have of you and you-know-who off your phone. And you better come up with a story right now. Because one of your friends took pictures of you walking with him in the hallways and kissing him behind the stairwell at school." So after I deleted everything off my phone, a few seconds later, my dad came into my room screaming his head off. He was so mad. I ended up getting my ass beat, and I also got grounded from my phone for 4 months. But after that, my mom ended up leaving my dad, and then him and I got back together. Storytime, my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for 2 years, but we were on and off all the time. It was a super toxic relationship. Like, he would try to get with other girls, and I would try to get with other guys to make him jealous, blah, blah, blah. Well, a week before Christmas, him and I broke up again. And I had my best friend sleep over that whole week because her parents were in Ireland. And my boyfriend lived right down the street from me. Like, it was probably a 2-minute walk to his house. Well, for the first 3 nights, my best friend would go on a jog every night, and she would be gone for like 2 hours. I would literally have to go unlock the door at 1 in the morning for her to get back in my house. Well, I think the 3rd night that she slept over, she came back in different clothes. And I realized that the sweatshirt she was wearing was my boyfriend's favorite sweatshirt. But I didn't really think anything of it because she never really showed interest in my boyfriend. But clearly I was oblivious. Anyways. So that same night, I wake up in the middle of the night and she's on the phone with someone. And it sounded exactly like my boyfriend. So I asked her who it was, but she couldn't give me an answer, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend cheated on me with my best friend. So she told me not to worry about it, and I was like, alright, whatever. So the next day, my boyfriend shows up at my house asking to get back together. Not a surprise, by the way. And of course I said, okay, we can be back together, blah, blah, blah. So that night while I'm in my room, my best friend's on the phone, and she has her AirPods in, so I couldn't hear who it was. And she was like, okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. And when I asked her where she was going, she wouldn't tell me. Well, she left her phone at my house. And because she usually tells me everything, I thought that something sus was going on. So I went through her phone. And I see that she's been texting this guy Jay a lot. And as I'm going through their conversation, there's one text that says, "I don't care if she finds out. Just sneak over to my house while you're there." So I check the phone numbers, and obviously it's my boyfriend. And her parents are really strict, like she was only supposed to be at my house that week, nowhere else. So I may have made up some stories that she had drugs in her bag, and that she was forcing me to do drugs with her. So her parents came home early from their trip, they sent her to military school, and I broke up with my boyfriend. Story time, my boyfriend found out that I had an OnlyFans. So my boyfriend and I have been together for probably 2 years. And I had just turned 18 and we decided that we were going to move in together. We both worked full-time jobs. I was a waitress, he worked at Walmart. And the restaurant that I worked at was literally a 2-minute walk from Walmart. And I was forced to get a job there by my boyfriend. Because he had super bad trust issues. I know you guys are going to be like, oh, well, I can see why. No. It was because of this rumor that went around right before we graduated that me and his best friend made out at a party. Child, anyways, back to the story. So then COVID hit. And it got to the point where him and I couldn't pay our bills or anything like that. So he got a job working for his uncle. And I went on unemployment, but it still wasn't helping. But my best friend was a stripper. And she told me that she had an OnlyFans account and that she was making really good money off of it. So since I was home every day doing absolutely nothing, I decided that I would make an OnlyFans account. And I didn't tell my boyfriend about it, like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend found out that I had an OnlyFans. So like I said, I made the OnlyFans and I didn't tell him about it. And I was only putting stuff on there like twice a week. But then my friend promoted me and I started making a lot more money. But then I started putting stuff on there every time that my boyfriend would go to work. So a month goes by and my boyfriend realizes that I have way more money than I did before. And he keeps asking me about it, but I tell him don't worry about it. which definitely seemed really sus. Anyways, the one day while he's at work, I'm taking some pics for my OF, and I'm blasting my music, and I turn around, and lo and behold, who do you think was standing in the doorway? My boyfriend. And he has his phone out, and he's recording me. So then he started explaining to me that because since I gave him such bad trust issues, and I wouldn't tell him where I was getting the extra money, he set up cameras in the house. And he's been watching me for 2 weeks straight. And he's still recording on his phone at this time. So we broke up, and now there's a video of me half naked on YouTube and him exposing me.
Story time of how I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2.5 years. His family loved me and my family loved him and they expected us to get married. Well, last year when COVID started, we were actually in different countries, so we didn't see each other for 3 months. During those 3 months, we FaceTimed 4 times a day, and we were always texting. He happened to be quarantining in our hometown, so both of our families were in the same place. I was quarantined in a different country. One day, my cousin calls me and tells me that she met a really nice guy on a dating website. I was so happy for her because she had had bad luck with guys. Every single week, her and I would catch up on the phone and she would tell me how much she liked this guy, and how amazing their dates were, and how amazing he was in bed, how sweet and considerate he was. I couldn't be happier for her. Well, when I finally get back home, my boyfriend is super distant and cold. So naturally, I called my cousin and complained. She told me to give him space. She said I should just leave him alone. And so like an idiot, I did leave him alone. One day, my cousin calls me and tells me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my boyfriend's car was parked in her garage. I thought it was just her nice way of trying to get us to talk. I walk in and catch them doing the dirty on the couch. Come back for part 2. So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my ex, come back for Part 3. So my lying, cheating ex calls me and explains to me why he actually slept with my cousin. He said that he was so lonely and that he didn't know what to do, and that the closest thing to me he could find was my cousin. Right, as if that was any comfort to me. He said I should be grateful that I didn't cheat with someone else. I told him he had totally betrayed my trust and that I could never ever trust him again. And then he confessed that she was pregnant and that his parents wanted them to get married. He said he just wanted to give me a heads up. Then he said that we could still be together but just not tell anyone, so basically he wanted me to be his side piece. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like I didn't know this man. Guess what I did? I recorded the entire conversation. So I went straight to my cousin and I let her listen to it. She was so shocked. She couldn't believe that he would offer to have me as a side chick. Well, I also let my uncle listen to it. He went to my ex's house and beat him up. Honestly, that made me sad, but he deserved it. They now have a baby and he's gained 50 pounds. Trust your instincts, girl, and always record your conversations. Also, how cute are my nails? Story time about how this one girl bullied me so bad she tried to beat me up, but guess what? The joke was on her because my sister beat her up. I was in 8th grade and I was bullied pretty badly, but this one girl in particular who didn't like me would make my life miserable. This girl was in 10th grade and I was in 8th grade at the time. I didn't defend myself at the time. I was really just scared of everything and everyone because I got bullied so much. And my sister knew that, which is why she was always looking out for me. She always had my back. So the bully, let's call her Jackie. Jackie started leaving me mean notes in my locker. And at the time, I guess I didn't really know if it was her. It could have been many people since I got bullied by many people. And the kids in my class would group around me whenever I would go to open my locker just to see my reaction when I would read the mean things she left in the notes. So for example, she would make fun of my acne and my big lips. But it got so much worse. One day I was walking down the hallway and she comes up right behind me and spills fake blood all over my back, making it look like I had my period. I was mortified, and she did this in front of everyone when we were on break. Then in front of everyone, she says that she's gonna beat me up at lunch and that I better be there, so come back for part 2. Part 2. So Jackie the bully spilled fake blood down my back, making it look like I had my period, and then she announced to everyone that she was going to beat me up at lunch and that I better be there. The bell rings and someone tells me that she's waiting for me at the soccer field. My god, I was so scared. Of course I wasn't planning on going, but 3 of the girls in my class literally took me by my arms and took me to the soccer field. Gosh, were they mean. And of course, there's a whole audience waiting for me. Jackie was right in the center. As soon as I get there, she starts yelling at me. And you know what I did? I asked her, why do you hate me so much? She actually didn't know what to say. She stayed quiet. So I asked her, what did I do to you? Then she said she saw me on a commercial in our local channel and that it made her really angry. And I said, is that all? Then she said that she didn't like my face either. She starts pushing me backwards. She pushed me a few times and I fell back. She was literally about to kick me when I hear my sister yelling from behind the crowd saying, why don't you pick on someone your own size? The crowd parts and my sister comes through and tells Jackie to leave me alone. Then she tried to kick me again and my sister tackled her to the ground. Come back for part 3. Part 3. As Jackie the bully is trying to kick me, my sister tackles her to the ground. Well, Jackie got really scared because she was not expecting that. Then my sister picks her up from the floor and throws her into a bush. Jackie starts to cry and she says that she's going to tell on my sister. Well, my sister says, I have all the notes that you've been sending to my sister and we can compare it to your own handwriting. Guess who they'll believe? My sister took me to the principal's office and we gave her all of the notes and I told her everything that happened. So the principal went and searched Jackie's backpack. Guess what she found? Scissors and tape. Jackie confessed that she wanted to tie my hands and cut off all my hair. She got suspended from school for 3 days. When she came back, her parents took her to my classroom and made her apologize in front of everyone. If you're being bullied, speak up.
Storytime about the guy who was obsessed with me. We're gonna call him Ryan. Well, Ryan had a crush on me for a long time. And one night, one of our friends asked me to go to a party with them. And Ryan was gonna be the DD. And everything was good. We were all having a great time at the party. Well, Ryan and I went off to one of the bathrooms. And we started making out. And while we're making out, he goes, I really want to fuck you, but I can't. And I'm just like, why? And he said it was because he couldn't get it up. And obviously he was embarrassed about it, which is understandable. So I left the bathroom and didn't plan on telling anybody about it. Until I walk over to a group of my guy friends, and they're telling me that apparently Ryan told everybody that we fucked. So at that point, I didn't give a fuck and I told them what actually happened. AKA that he couldn't get hard. And apparently he was mad at me after that, but I had no idea. So he said, do you still want me to take you home? So I said, yeah. And now that he drove me home, he knew where I lived. And then I got a text from one of his friends, like for part 2. Part 2 about the guy who was obsessed with me. So like I said, as soon as I got dropped off, his friend Ella texted me. And she was like, oh, it was so wrong for you to say that he couldn't get it up and a bunch of other nonsense. And I just brushed it off and I was like, whatever. So I went to sleep and the next morning then I woke up. So my house had like a gate to get in and there were locks on it and all the locks were broke. And my stepdad also saw that he slashed my fucking tires. I ended up telling him everything that happened that night, and my stepdad's 32 and Ryan's 22, so they're only a 10-year difference. He basically gave me an option. He was like, either I can call the cops or I can go beat this kid's ass. I was like, okay, just call the cops. So we called the cops and they ended up catching him on the surveillance camera, like of him breaking the locks and slashing my tires and everything like that. So then they found him and arrested him. And let me get this straight, if he just wouldn't have lied about it, then it would have never came out that like he couldn't get it up. He just had to go and tell everybody that we fucked. Storytime, my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So a little background information. I was a sophomore in high school, and the one night my friends and I were playing Truth or Dare. Well, a little bit into the game, my friends dared me to download Tinder and message the first 5 guys that I saw. And what do you know, the last guy that I saw on there was my gym teacher. So obviously I messaged him and I was like, hey, OMG, it's blah, blah, blah from your 3rd period class. And obviously I wasn't expecting him to answer, but he did. And he was like, oh, this is weird. How are you? So after that, my friends were like, oh, okay, like it's time to delete it. So I pretended that I did. And when they left, I started messaging him more. So we had been messaging that whole week and one thing led to another. Next thing I knew, he was sneaking me out of my house at 2 a.m. And he was like 32, so he wasn't that old. Well, for the next month, we were going to restaurants that were like an hour away. Almost every weekend, he would rent out a hotel for us. Well, the one night his wife was supposed to be out with some friends. So he invited me over like for part 2. Part 2 about how my gym teacher's wife found out that he was having an affair with me. So like I said, his wife was supposed to be gone the whole night because she was at the bar with her friends and they were supposed to get in a hotel. So he invited me over. So we went swimming in his pool, then we did the nasty. Well, a few hours later, him and I were sitting on the couch watching a movie. And his wife kept calling him. But he just kept ignoring it, saying that she was fine and he didn't want to answer the call and ruin our time together. So we go upstairs, lay down to go to sleep. And it's like 4 a.m. at this point. So I shit you not, literally an hour later, I wake up to his wife carefully shaking me to wake me up. She goes, honey, come downstairs. I don't want to wake him up. He has work tomorrow. And I'm like, what the actual fuck? So I went downstairs and she's like, sit at the table with me. So we're sitting at the table and she's like, I hope that we can keep this quiet. She was like, my husband's done this before. And that she can't have any of her friends knowing or anybody at school because she's a PTA mom. So she offered me money to keep my mouth shut. And then she let me go back upstairs and lay with him. What the fuck?
I do the most beautiful time. I do the most beautiful time. You got the most beautiful diamond. You've got the most beautiful diamond. You've got the most beautiful diamond eyes
Story time about how I found out my high school boyfriend was stalking me for weeks after we broke up. My junior year of high school, I had a super controlling and jealous boyfriend. He would get totally upset and jealous over the smallest thing, and he was so envious of my modeling and acting career. He also tried to control my social life. I couldn't have friends, and I never went out. If I had a photo shoot, he always insisted on going. My family hated the way he treated me. He was also just angry and upset all the time, so even when we hung out, it wasn't a fun time. I decided to break up with him over the phone because I knew if I did it in person, he would have made a scene. Of course, he begged me not to break up with him. I told him I just couldn't handle his jealousy and his envy. He really couldn't take no for an answer, so he would show up to my house and beg me to go for car rides with him because he just wanted to talk. I always said no because I was scared of him. I also called my family's house to see if I was there or not. One day I was driving home from school and I noticed he was right behind me. I texted him to stop following me. He said, "I'm not behind you, that's not me." I literally pulled over, and when I did that, he sped off. Later, he came to my house and tried to force me into his car. Come back for part 2. So my jealous and controlling ex-boyfriend shows up to my house. Mind you, he had been following me the entire day, and when I told him to stop following me, he said it wasn't him. I heard his car pull up, I went outside, and I told him politely to please leave. That's when he grabbed my arm and pulled me towards his car. I opened his car door and literally tried to throw me inside the car. I put my feet up against the car, and I pushed myself as hard as I could. I was not going to let him force me into that car. When he saw how hard I was fighting, he started to cry, and he said, "Why can't we just take a ride and talk?" I told him there was nothing to talk about and that he needed to just let me go. He said, "You can't get rid of me that easily." Then he sped off in his car. At the time, I was working at a cafe near my house. So I show up to my job the next day and my boss tells me to go into her office right away. She pulls up camera security footage of the restaurant and then she says, "Tell me if you recognize anyone." Guess who I see? My ex-boyfriend looking through the window 2 hours before the restaurant even opened. Then he went to his car and sat there until I arrived, and when he saw my car pull up, he left really fast. When my shift was over, I walked to my car and I can see my ex hiding behind the tree next to my car. I'm back for part 3, it's scary. My crazy jealous ex had been stalking me for days and I could see him hiding behind a tree next to my car. I run back into my job and I tell my boss right away. She calls the cops, but they say they can't come unless I've been physically threatened. The rest of the week, I noticed him following me to school and wherever I would go. Saturday comes around and I go back to my job. Once again, my boss tells me to go into her office because she has something to show me. He pulls up more camera security footage and shows me that my boyfriend had been going to my job every single day before it opened to see if I was there. And he would stay for hours waiting in his car. I felt so sick to my stomach. When I get home, I tell my mom everything and then she calls his mom. Well, his mom took his phone and his car away. Was the only way to stop him from following me. Finally, he left me alone. 2 years later, I found out he became really good friends with my brother. Came home from school one summer, and he actually tried to kiss me in the kitchen several times, and I told him no. He didn't speak to me after that. Story time about how my ex caught me cheating on him. My ex was the biggest player in my college. All the girls knew him, and everyone warned me not to hang out with him. Of course, I didn't listen. He asked me to be his girlfriend, and I said yes, of course. We had been going out for a few months, but every time he would go to a frat party, I would hear from someone else that he had been cheating on me or that he was trying to hook up with other girls. And I would ask him about it. He would absolutely deny it and say that people were just trying to separate us because they were envious of our relationship. I believed him a little bit, but something told me I shouldn't. So of course, I decided to check his messages, and guess what? I found a bunch of messages between him and girls that he went to class with. I confronted him, and he denied everything. He said those were not his messages and that I was probably making things up. He deleted the messages before I could take screenshots. It was around the time of my birthday and I was planning a party, and I told him he couldn't come to my party because I was upset at him. I made sure to invite a friend of his to my party who I knew had a crush on me. So his friend and I got really cozy at my party. We started hanging out every single day after Part 2. So my cheating boyfriend didn't show up to my birthday party. Instead, I invited one of his friends, who I knew had a crush on me. Let's call him Bob. Well, Bob and I started hanging out all the time. Behind my boyfriend's back, of course. My boyfriend and I would hang out less and less. Well, Bob started catching feelings, and he asked me to break up with my boyfriend and to basically come clean to him, and I said no. I had no intention of leaving my boyfriend. I just wanted to get revenge. And honestly, it felt really good to do that. Bob got really upset because I didn't want to break up with my boyfriend, and he went off. I started hearing rumors around the school about me hooking up with Bob. My boyfriend asked me about it, and I said, I don't know where that's coming from. I haven't hooked up with anyone. My boyfriend didn't believe me. My boyfriend went to a party that night and he didn't invite me, which of course, you know what that means. I asked Bob if we could hang out, so I went over to his place. We're on his couch kissing, and my boyfriend comes in through the door. Part 3. So while I'm hooking up with Bob on his couch, my boyfriend walks in through the door. Bob got up from the couch and went and stood next to my boyfriend. And my boyfriend just begins to say, I knew that you were cheating on me. You see, I knew it. Rumors were true. And I said, well, you've been cheating on me for months since we started dating. Then Bob pipes up and says, look, I'm sorry I did this to you, but it had to be done. I slowly started to realize that I had been set up by both of them. I went back to my dorm and I didn't speak to them for a few days. My boyfriend was calling and begging me to get back with him. He said he would forgive me for the cheating if I forgave him for cheating on me. But Bob was also messaging me asking me to be his girlfriend. He said he'd never cheat on me like my boyfriend did and that he really had feelings for me. Well, I didn't get back with my boyfriend, but we're hooking up. And I'm still hooking up with Bob too, but I made him promise that he wouldn't tell my ex. I did find out that my ex cheated on me with 15 girls. And that's on toxic. Are you ready for a scary story? The Legend of La Llorona. La Llorona is a legend, a figure of the night that terrorizes farmers in Nicaragua. During colonial times in Nicaragua, La Llorona was a young girl living with her mother. The Spaniards put them to work. Her mother always told her Indian blood should never mix with Spaniard blood. One day while she's at the river, she meets a Spanish man and they fall in love. They met at the river many times and she fell pregnant. She asked him to take her back with him to Spain and he said no. He abandoned her, leaving her with a child. She cried so much she fell asleep, and when she woke up, she had a baby in her arms. She was full of spite and anger, and she knew she had to kill the baby. She threw the baby into the river, and she could hear the baby's cries. She instantly regretted it and went to save it, but she couldn't. The baby had drowned and was gone. According to the legend, her spirit comes out at night to terrorize the people of León. La Llorona Part 2. After she threw her baby into the river, she heard its cries and ran back to save it, but it had drowned and disappeared. She walked back to town, but she could still hear the baby's cries. Nothing could bring her comfort. Legend has it she walks the streets wailing and crying for her child, naming her La Llorona. She could still hear her baby's cries for her when it was drowning. It consumed her mind and her body. Even now, people still hear La Llorona outside of their houses, and when they do, they dare not go outside. So the next time you hear wailing and crying outside of your window, outside of your house, don't look, because it just might be La Llorona.
Am I wrong for telling my sister not to name her daughter Chewbacca? My 24 female, sister 28 female found out she was pregnant 5 months ago. Recently, she and her husband 31 male announced that they were having a girl and finally decided on a baby named Chewbacca. I was more than a bit shocked, even more so when I found out that the name was the product of a long discussion and compromise between them. My sister wanted to name their daughter after our late grandmother Rebecca. Brother-in-law, who's obsessed with Star Wars, wanted to use a name from the movies. Before they knew they were having a girl, he wanted a son to name Chewie, which I still think is a bit odd, but it's not unheard of, so whatever. The problem is that he got attached to the name. Even after they found out they were having a girl, he didn't want to look for a female or gender-neutral Star Wars name. He still wanted Chewie. This is where it gets dumb. After arguing over it for a while, debating using one as a middle name, and sister pushing brother-in-law to choose a different name from the series, they somehow decided the best compromise would be just to mash the names together. When I asked my sister why she would agree to something so stupid, she got annoyed and told me that it's not like anyone would ever call her that. They'll use her nickname Becca. I told her not to name her daughter Chewbacca and that she'll probably get bullied for having a name that sounds like a dog's name. She got mad and said her daughter is not a dog, which, obviously, and that what she named her child was none of my business. She asked me to leave if I was just going to badmouth her daughter. I told her I wasn't. I was just concerned about my niece getting bullied for having a stupid name. I think I did the right thing bringing up my concerns, but when I got home that night, I got a call from my mom telling me to drop it. She didn't like the name either, but said it wasn't our business and that my sister was right about just calling her Becca. I think both my mom and sister think the whole nickname thing is a clever way of getting around brother-in-law to get the name they actually want. But what if he insists on his side of the family using the nickname Chewie? But I don't know. Maybe the Becca thing will work? I know I'm sticking my nose in where it isn't wanted, but is it a bad thing to bring up the future problems of having the name Chewbacca, or am I really overstepping? Am I wrong for asking my friend to not go to his painting class because my girlfriend would be modeling? So my 20 male and girlfriend 21 female go to a college that has a decently sized art program. I'm not overly involved in that side of things. I'm a computer science major and my girlfriend is an English literature major, so she's right on the edge of the art program. A close friend of mine is an art major. His program offers an optional art class sort of thing where they can meet 4 times a month to paint a model and they can bring the painting to one of their major classes for extra credit. This class isn't required and as far as I know, most people do it for fun. My friend is a great artist and I've seen a lot of his work and it's always amazing and incredibly detailed. Like almost photorealistic, and he hangs them up in his dorm. And here comes the problem for me. My girlfriend told me this week that she signed up and was selected to e-model for the first 4 classes of the semester. I didn't have a problem with this until I realized this would mean my friend would be seeing my girlfriend naked, painting her and hanging up a picture of my naked girlfriend in his room. I asked her first and told her I wasn't very comfortable with specifically my friend seeing her naked and said I'd feel more comfortable if she didn't do it. She said no and told me I was making this out to be sexual when it wasn't. I told her that it may not be sexual, but I still don't want my friend to have essentially a nude of her hanging in a place where me and the rest of my friends go to hang out regularly. If he paints her, then it's likely all of my friends are going to see my girlfriend nude, which is a huge problem for me. My girlfriend told me I was being overly insecure. So then I went to my friend as a guy. I assumed that since he was another man, he would get what I was saying better than a woman could. I explained to him the situation and he said no, as it's art and he gets no sexual pleasure from seeing the models naked. Usually it's old men in their 40s, but I doubt he won't get some level of arousal from seeing my girlfriend nude. Oh my god, this dude. He accused me of pornifying his art and he had the right to put it wherever. He also told my girlfriend and they both think that I'm an asshole. So am I? Yeah, you asked your girlfriend. First of all, your friend has nothing to do with this, okay? If you had a problem with it with your girlfriend, that's between you and her. She said no. Okay, you got pissy, you didn't like her answer, so you went behind her back and told your friend. Get the fuck out of here with that shit.
Am I the asshole for kicking my fiance out of the house for letting my snake loose outside? I, 27 male, have always been an animal lover. I love snakes, tarantulas, scorpions, lizards, geckos, dogs, and cats. When I moved out of my parents' house and into my hometown, I decided to adopt a ball python. She's very docile and loves to be held. I set her tank up in one of the rooms downstairs. When my fiance and I decided we were ready to move in together, I slowly introduced her to the snake. She thought it was cool and even held her. A few months ago, her friends came over, and ever since she's been asking me to find a new home for the snake. Am I the asshole for kicking my fiance out of the house for letting my snake loose outside? I had to travel to another state for work and trusted her to take care of the snake. I was gone for a week, and when I came back, I saw the tank completely gone. I searched all over the house for it, and it was nowhere to be found. I went outside and checked the wooded area behind my townhome and found the tank. It was open with no sign of my snake. When my fiance got home, I showed her the tank and told her to pack a suitcase and find another place to stay. Her defense was that I was giving the snake too much attention. She's currently staying with her parents and they think I'm overreacting over an animal. Am I the asshole for evicting my sister and daughters after they hid my wife's wig? I want to mention that my wife is a cancer patient and she unfortunately started losing her hair due to chemotherapy. She's insecure about it and her lack of hair in particular. She got a wig and I don't mind it. I 100% support her since she only wears it around family and friends. Well, my sister lost her apartment after a messy divorce and moved in with her twin daughter, 16. Things have been going well except for my niece's constant remarks about my wife's wig. They asked to try it on, asked to straighten it, and also pressured to see her without it, but my wife was uncomfortable and refused. Yesterday when I got home, she was crying. Am I the asshole for evicting my sister and her daughters after they hid my wife's wig? I found my wife locked in the bedroom crying. I asked what happened and she told me she woke up and couldn't find her wig, then discovered my nieces took it. They urged her to come out so they could see her without it. My wife repeatedly asked them to give it back, but they started laughing and recording. I was fuming, went to the kitchen and confronted them and they acted confused. I got the wig back and lashed out and they said it was just a lighthearted prank. My sister said my wife was being too sensitive and the girls were curious, but I told her they were recording her. She said I overreacted and I told them to leave. Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her husband would take her more seriously if she didn't dress like she did? My sister Anna married my friend Lance and he was the cool guy in our friend group. I don't know how he ended up with my sister. She's the total opposite, loud, funny, and outgoing. She's really beautiful though, and when they got together, everyone said how good they looked. She seemed to be in love with him all the time. She would say how dreamy he was, how good he treated her, and how spoiled she felt. But Lance was quiet and stern. She would revolve around him at family gatherings, but wouldn't engage much with everyone else except for me. I was surprised when he asked her to marry him. She never took the wifey role too serious and had a non-traditional wedding. Am I the asshole for telling my sister that her husband would take her more seriously if she didn't dress how she did? She doesn't work, didn't finish her studies, and they don't plan on having kids. My sister's pretty much only into her looks and always on Snapchat or Instagram. I thought once married she would dress more appropriate since she always showed her cleavage, wore short skirts or tight jeans. She said that Lance likes her just fine. Well, last week it was my dad's birthday and she wore a pretty short floral dress. Most of the men were looking at her, including my dad's friends, and Lance was stoic as always. My sister said she didn't know why he was so quiet, but he's always like that. I told her if she didn't dress like that, maybe he'd take her more seriously. Am I the asshole for telling my wife she needs to leave the house so I can have poker night? We've been married for 16 years. I'm 42 and she's 41. We also have 2 girls, 13 and 12. Soon after we married, we made kind of a deal. She said once a month she's gonna kick me out of the house so her and her friends can scrapbook together, drink wine, and have fun. I said okay as long as she didn't give me a hard time when I wanted to hang out with my buddies. She said yes, fair deal. Over the years, I've held up my end of the bargain, which I've had no problem with. I haven't had many guys' weekends. However, I've picked up new buddies at my job, and one thing we like to do is have poker night. Am I the asshole for telling my wife she needs to leave the house for poker night? I've picked up some new buddies over the years, and one thing we like to do is poker night. We've never had one at our house, and recently I volunteered it. When I told my wife about it though, I got pushback. She's kind of a homebody and said on a Friday night after a long work week, the last thing she wanted was to get kicked out of her own home and have to figure out something to do with herself. I reminded her of all the times she's kicked me out so she could scrapbook, but she said that was different. That there was years of precedent for it and that I'd agreed to it. She said she never agreed to letting me host poker nights for the guys, and it turned into a pretty big argument.
Am I wrong for telling my brother and sister-in-law that their pregnancy announcement was trashy? My family has a 21 plus adult-only gift exchange, volunteer only. If you sign up, you have to spend $20 on each person. We have a Google Doc with a list of things each person would like, their sizes, and favorite snacks. You follow the list, you spend $20 per person, and we have the exchange after the kids go to sleep. My sister-in-law Kelsey, 34 female, and my brother Kyle, 30 male, both signed up to be on the list. They asked to go last because they had something special they wanted everyone to open together. Everyone else followed the list and got people something they would like. Kelsey and Kyle spent $5 per person. It was a sonogram picture in a cheap dollar store frame and a note saying $35 has been donated to the baby in your name, and a 2XL shirt with puffy paint that said Baby Bella 2022. We all said congrats about the baby and talked about it for a bit. My dad then said, "Do you want to finish the exchange? This is great news, but we have to be heading home, so if you want to get the rest of the presents." Kelsey said, "That is the gift." Kyle got up to use the bathroom and my dad followed after him. They had an argument in the hallway and Kyle stormed out. My dad was like, "Everyone can take their gifts back from Kyle and Kelsey because this is bullshit," and they knew exactly what they were doing. A few people did take their gifts back and left, but the rest of us sort of sat there until it calmed down and then went home. Kyle ended up showing up at my house 2 days later with a real present and apologized. He said in a very angry tone, "Kelsey has been crying about it for days now, so thank Dad for ruining the surprise." He then asked if I liked the gift, and I said no. He asked why not. I said, "Well, everyone else got you a real present with thought put into it. You didn't even get me a shirt that fit, that was printed professionally, and then spent the majority of the money on yourself. It felt cheap and ruined the spirit of the exchange." He called me an asshole and left. So, am I? No.
Am I the asshole for not telling my daughter I'm aware of her lifestyle until almost a year later? My daughter is 25 and she lives a fairly wealthy life, and when asked by family, she says she invests stocks and crypto. I know she does, but that's not even half of her income. She does OnlyFans and Twitter and PH. I'm aware of this because I will admit a single man in his 40s has needs, and I recognized it as her right away. I clicked on the Twitter profile and her face was the profile picture. I blocked her, made a note of the name so I wouldn't come across them anywhere else, and felt kind of weird myself. However, at the time, I didn't bring it up to her. Am I the asshole for not telling my daughter I'm aware of her lifestyle until almost a year later? I blocked her, made a note of the name so I wouldn't come across them anywhere else, and felt kind of weird myself. However, I didn't bring it up to her. That was a year ago, and a few days ago, she finally admitted at a family function what she does. Mixed reactions and anger aside, I did let her know I knew, and I respected her choice as long as she was being safe and knew she was okay with this being online forever. She got really upset with me and told me I shouldn't be watching those kind of things and that I'm disgusting and vile. She hasn't talked to me since, and I get her disgust, but is it really that bad I never told her? Am I the asshole for banning mother-in-law from my life after she said I slept with father-in-law? So I met mother-in-law and father-in-law before I met my boyfriend because I used to work for them. He happens to be autistic, and I noticed shortly after starting the relationship that everyone in his family treated him like he was unable to do things. They also often tried to influence him into doing things that they wanted him to do. I told myself I'd never do this and would always treat him like the adult he is. I encourage him to make his own decisions and can tell he's grown a lot in the past 5 years. His mom resented that I became such an important person for his son and that he took my opinion into consideration. Am I the asshole for banning mother-in-law from my life after she said I slept with father-in-law? My boyfriend let me borrow his car to go on a 4-day college trip, and when she found out, she went ballistic. He never lent his mom the car to go anywhere. She screamed and said I was a manipulative B-word who slept with half of our town before we met, and even his father. And because his father wouldn't continue the relationship, I started dating the son, which is a lie. My boyfriend had a meltdown and asked to move in with me for a while because he didn't want to be around her. This was months ago, but my boyfriend's okay now and on speaking terms with her. Now we're moving to a house of our own, and his family wants us to have a good relationship with mother-in-law again, but I don't know.
I think my husband only wants to have another kid because he thinks our son is gay. Our son, 7 male, has always been very feminine. Most of his friends are girls, his favorite toys are Barbies, and he had an awkward situation in school where he kept drawing himself as a female singer for the When I Grow Up part of his graduation. He would dress up in girls' clothes if he could, and I'm not judgmental, but that wouldn't be the best for him where we live, so he's not allowed. I'm not sure why he's like this, but I was such a tomboy when I was younger that it's not really a surprise. One of his friends, a boy, came over a little while ago, and my son told me that he kissed him. It was on the forehead apparently, but he didn't describe it in a romantic way, obviously. He just wanted to show that he loved him because you kiss people when you love them a lot. My husband is convinced that our son is gay. He's not upset about it, more neutral, but I think it's harmful to assume a 7-year-old's sexuality because he does things that we've arbitrarily decided are for girls. When he heard about the forehead kiss, he said, "Are you still saying he's not gay?" And I asked why it would be a big deal to begin with, and he said it's not, but he won't give up hopes for grandkids. Recently, my husband has been suggesting we should have another kid. I asked him why the sudden change, and he said he loves being a dad more than he ever thought he would. I believe him about that, but the timing in his comment about grandkids won't leave my mind. I originally wanted to adopt, and he said even if it's selfish, he wanted his only child to be biologically his. I'm putting all of this together, and to me, I'm worried he only wants another child to have biological grandkids. I feel like that is showing that he's going to love our son less than this hypothetical next child. Does it sound like that to you too, or am I reading too much into it? Am I wrong for walking out of my cousin's wedding? I, 45 female, was recently contacted out of the blue by my cousin, John, 47 male, daughter, Emily, 23, who wanted to meet more of his family after he's been no contact with all of us since his wedding about 25 years ago. He was apparently furious with her when he found out and forbade any further contact unless we all apologized for walking out of his wedding. John had been engaged to Rachel for about 2 years and she was a very lovely and sweet person. All of the family loved her and they really tried to make her feel like part of the family. They'd come to holidays and birthdays for all the family and we threw a party for her on her birthday. We didn't hear from them in a month or two leading up to the wedding, but we figured they were just busy with last minute planning and none of us were in the wedding party. On their wedding day, all of us, about 20 cousins, aunts, and uncles, turned up to the venue to see signs for John and Kristen's wedding. We thought we were at the wrong place initially until John came out and confirmed that it was the right wedding hall. John said that he'd called off the engagement with Rachel a month prior after reconnecting with an old flame, and they decided to use the date to get married instead. We were all confused and upset, and while John was trying to calm everyone down, I went and used the venue's phone to call Rachel. She said that 2 weeks before, she had caught John cheating with Kristen and ended things right then. She said that John had refused to cancel what they could for the wedding and get back what money they could. Instead, he used them towards this new wedding with Kristen. Most of the family and I then walked out, saying that we were not going to stay for this bait-and-switch wedding, especially after he had treated Rachel so horribly and him not even telling anyone that he was marrying someone else. Yeah, that's fucked. He said that it shouldn't matter who he is marrying and that as a family, we had to stay and support him. We didn't, so he hasn't spoken to any of us for 25 years. So, am I the asshole for walking out of the wedding and not apologizing even after 25 years? Hell no. Good for you.
Storytime of how I found out my boyfriend was cheating on me with my cousin. My boyfriend and I had been together for 2.5 years. His family loved me and my family loved him and they expected us to get married. Well, last year when COVID started, we were actually in different countries, so we didn't see each other for 3 months. During those 3 months, we FaceTimed 4 times a day, and we were always texting. He happened to be quarantining in our hometown, so both of our families were in the same place. I was quarantined in a different country. One day, my cousin calls me and tells me that she met a really nice guy on a dating website. I was so happy for her because she had had bad luck with guys. Every single week, her and I would catch up on the phone and she would tell me how much she liked this guy, and how amazing their dates were, and how amazing he was in bed, how sweet and considerate he was. I couldn't be happier for her. Well, when I finally get back home, my boyfriend is super distant and cold. So naturally, I called my cousin and complained. She told me to give him space. She said I should just leave him alone. And so like an idiot, I did leave him alone. One day, my cousin calls me and tells me to come over for dinner. When I got there, my boyfriend's car was parked in her garage. I thought it was just her nice way of trying to get us to talk. I walk in and catch them doing the dirty on the couch. Come back for part 2. So I walk in on my cousin and my boyfriend doing the dirty on her couch. They quickly get up from the couch and get dressed. Of course, by that time, I'm in hysterics. I'm crying and yelling. My boyfriend instantly got on his knees and begged me for forgiveness. I went up to my cousin and I punched her right in the face. She wasn't expecting that. And I said, well, this is the guy that you've been dating, isn't it? She said yes, and that she was just trying to find the best way to tell me. And so she just thought the best way to tell me was to get me to walk in on her and him doing the dirty. I punched her again. My boyfriend came to her rescue though. Instantly went into hero mode, which made me even angrier, so I punched him too. I stormed out of her house and went back to my house. Well, I told my parents everything. And my dad went over to my uncle's house, my cousin's dad, and he told him everything. She was about to turn 19, so he took away her phone and her car. And I get a phone call from my ex, come back for Part 3. So my lying, cheating ex calls me and explains to me why he actually slept with my cousin. He said that he was so lonely and that he didn't know what to do, and that the closest thing to me he could find was my cousin. Right, as if that was any comfort to me. He said I should be grateful that I didn't cheat with someone else. I told him he had totally betrayed my trust and that I could never ever trust him again. And then he confessed that she was pregnant and that his parents wanted them to get married. He said he just wanted to give me a heads up. Then he said that we could still be together but just not tell anyone, so basically he wanted me to be his side piece. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth. It was like I didn't know this man. Guess what I did? I recorded the entire conversation. So I went straight to my cousin and I let her listen to it. She was so shocked. She couldn't believe that he would offer to have me as a side chick. Well, I also let my uncle listen to it. He went to my ex's house and beat him up. Honestly, that made me sad, but he deserved it. They now have a baby and he's gained 50 pounds. Trust your instincts, girl, and always record your conversations. Also, how cute are my nails?